Some of the most common reasons are eyewitness identification errors. These are situations in which someone thinks that they saw a defendant, and most of the times these are honest mistakes. These are people who are fairly certain that when they're pointing the finger at a suspect that that's the right guy, and in fact they're wrong. And they're wrong for a number of psychological bases that have any of us in certain circumstances just not appreciating exactly what we're saying or seeing and making mistakes in the identification. That's a commonality. Another common factor is poor defense lawyering. That is unfortunately the scourge of our criminal justice system, where defendants simply do not get the kind of representation that they ought to. In our study, the one that we did, one of the things that we found was actually cases that didn't have very strong evidence from the prosecution led to wrongful convictions. Now that one kind of is counterintuitive, because you would think, well, if there's not really strong evidence, that would be identified early and as a result would be thrown out of the system. And what we found instead is what happens is that these cases languish on prosecutors' desks as they wait for more evidence to come in. And at the end, the prosecutors do is they just take it to a grand jury. The grand jury ends up indicting. And once the case gets into court, juries are much more likely to believe that the defendant is there because he's guilty. Sometimes defendants actually plead guilty to cases where they didn't do it. Other times, juries will convict. These are some of the predominant reasons